Hello everyone, this is Jennifer. Welcome back to the Ranching and Roots Kitchen. We are still working our way through the Three Rivers Pantry Challenge. If you're not familiar with this, I'll leave a link to Jessica's channel in the description box below. But the gist of it is you try not to go to the grocery store for a period of time and focus on using what you already have. My goals for doing this challenge are to use up the old to make room for new, whether that be store-bought stuff that I have pushed to the side to use some of the things that I've canned, or things I preserved a few years ago that we didn't really love. That's one of my focuses for this, is to really focus on those things that we just don't love, but the food is still good, it's still nourishing, so we need to use it up so it doesn't go to waste. The only rules are really you make the rules, so whatever rules meet your goals. My rules did include a dairy allowance every week. Our milk cow is currently not in milk, and I have a 2-year-old who loves milk and a husband who will not live without sour cream. So, though we did allow ourselves $20 a week for dairy. Another little caveat, we do have a lot of new things happening at our church right now, so I have had to go to the store to buy some supplies and things that I needed for that. I'm considering that kind of a separate thing in my head. So all that to say, we are still going to the store, but we are buying considerably less groceries, really just dairy and anything I might need for church. So today I'm going to take you along as I use some of the things in my pantry to make 5 breakfasts that we tend to make over and over throughout the year. These are some of my go-tos, easy things that I don't have to think about, don't really have to look at a recipe for. Things I forgot to mention in our video last week during the pantry tour was that I do have 5-gallon buckets out in the garage. I typically buy our grains in bulk. Things like flour, oats, wheat berries, sugar, salt, those kind of things. I always do a bulk buy grocery haul at the beginning of the year for all of our dry goods, shampoo, soap, those kinds of things also. And then I just kind of see how far it gets us through the year. Then I'll make notes if I had to buy more to get through the whole year. Then the next year I'll add to my quantities that I buy. If I had too much at the end of the year, I'll buy less. I like to keep a pretty well stocked pantry. We live about 20 miles from the nearest grocery store, so we try to make the most of those trips and not have to run to town every few days. If you haven't figured it out, I am making a couple loaves of sourdough bread so we can have toast for breakfast. This recipe does make 2 loaves. Even though my daughter eats toast for breakfast almost every day, we usually only go through 1 loaf a week, so that gives me the opportunity to share one with someone else. I used to be so intimidated by sourdough. When you read a recipe, it just seems like there's so much timing and so many steps. But just like anything, after you kind of get over that first couple times of doing it, I'm not an expert by any means, but it does get significantly easier. I am sure there are some sourdough bakers that are cringing at some of my techniques or something, but I'm still learning, but it turns out week after week, and it is definitely edible, so that is good enough for me. I like to use about 30 to 50% of my flour to be whole wheat. You'll want hard white wheat berries for bread making. I do buy those in bulk at the beginning of the year. I'll leave a link in the description of the wheat berries that I use. My husband is blessed to work for a very generous farmer that lives near us, and they grow soft red wheat berries. So he lets me go get a couple buckets full of the soft wheat berries out of the combine in the spring when they do harvest. So that is a huge blessing that I don't have to purchase those. You use soft berries for things like biscuits or quick breads, things that don't need that structure to rise. They don't have that long rise time. We do still occasionally buy some store-bought bread, and really the only thing we use it for is peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for my daughter. Sourdough, it's a denser dough, and there's just so much there. It is hard for her to chew like 2 pieces plus peanut butter in a bite at 2 years old. So I do find it strange that store-bought bread like does not go bad. It doesn't mold, which is concerning and one of the main reasons I like to make our own bread. But we bought some bread before we started the pantry challenge, so probably in January when we did our bulk grocery haul, and I just threw the last heel away yesterday and it still had not molded and looked the exact same as it did when we bought it, which is weird and concerning to me. I got these silicone mats for my bread pans when I was making yeast bread, and I love them. I do not like wasting parchment paper all the time, and that really is necessary. You have to put something under your sourdough to keep it from sticking to your pan. But they kind of make my bread a little bit of a weird shape because they're made for a rectangular pan. I know they make ones for round pans. I'm just too cheap to go ahead and buy them. So I just keep using these even though they make my bread kind of a weird shape. I will link them in the description, but like I said, there are round ones that you can get specifically for making artisan sourdough loaves like this. It may be a weird shape, but it still tastes delicious. It tastes even more delicious when you add some jam made from local berries that we picked last summer. I believe this is strawberry jam. It would be even better if I had gone and got some raw milk from a local dairy, or if our cow was in milk and made some homemade butter with it too. But I did not, so store-bought butter it is. Next on our breakfast menu is yogurt. If you have an Instant Pot, yogurt is so easy to make. All you need is milk and some sort of a starter culture, and it is a great way to use up milk that is getting ready to go bad. This milk was going to expire in just a few days, and I have more than I can use in that time period. So um, you pasteurize it anyway, so it kills all the bad bacteria and kind of gives you a blank slate for your good bacteria. The only other thing you need is some sort of a starter culture. So you can get just your favorite unflavored plain Greek yogurt at the store to get started the first time, or you can buy yogurt starter cultures on various websites. Once you make your first batch, if you're making it every week, you can just use a little bit of your last week's batch to inoculate this week's batch. I haven't made yogurt in a few weeks, so I don't have any from a previous batch. So last summer, I made a big batch of yogurt and put it in the freeze dryer, and then I packaged it in these individual packages. And the bacteria that cultures your yogurt will come back alive when you rehydrate it. So this is actually some starter culture for yogurt I made last summer. That's pretty handy because then you never have to run out and get more. You never have to buy yogurt at the grocery store. It's just always there waiting for you. The only step I really didn't get on video is I like to strain my yogurt and save the whey. It makes a thicker yogurt, and then you also have the whey that you can use in baking later. Now I'm going to get started on a breakfast casserole. I love these casseroles because you can mix them up and add different things, and the base is always the same. It's always cubed sourdough. And for our family, I usually use about 8 eggs. These eggs are actually from last March, April-ish during the spring egg flush. If you've never heard of water glassing eggs, it's a really simple process. You just add some masonry lime to water in specific ratios, and then you put your clean, unwashed eggs in it, and they stay good for at least a whole year. I've never tested it for longer than that, but before I put them in anything, I always crack them into a separate bowl and give them a little sniff test before I add them to the rest of my ingredients. Just to be safe, that way I don't ruin the whole recipe if I did happen to have one egg that was not very good. So you can switch this up so much. Sometimes I'll add sausage or bacon or ham, just any meat. I've even seen people do it with like a Tex-Mex with taco meat, like leftover taco meat from dinner. This is some home rendered lard that I'm using for the fat to keep things from sticking. We made this last fall when we got our pig from Rock and Sea Farm. That's a local farm a friend of ours owns, and they raise pigs for us every year. I'm just going to go ahead and pop that in the oven to get it melted and the pan hot. Anytime you can get your pan hot and the oil hot, that really helps keep things from sticking. Casseroles like this are also a great way to use up some frozen, or in my case, freeze-dried garden vegetables from the year before. In this one, we are putting some sweet bell peppers, some hot peppers, some onions, and also some freeze-dried cheddar cheese. I will add a little bit of extra milk to compensate for those freeze-dried vegetables soaking up some of the moisture in it. If you're using frozen vegetables, I would probably use a little less milk than you normally would, because those frozen vegetables are going to put off some water as they thaw. And then I'm just going to top it with some leftover shredded cheese that we had from tacos the night before. Josh and I don't eat a lot of breakfast, so a casserole like this will actually last us several days. And we'll also have it for like afternoon snacks. It's really high protein, so it'll tide us over. Fried eggs and toast is a regular meal that we have, especially in the early spring during the egg flush. We have not had this since probably October, when our chickens decided to stop laying, so it's kind of exciting to have that for the first time this year. Many people don't realize that eggs are actually a seasonal food that we do not get during the winter unless you're adding artificial light, which we like to give our chickens a break. That's the way God intended for them to have during the winter, as a time of rest. So we let them do that, and we just have to use our either freeze-dried or water glassed eggs over the winter. So those fresh eggs are kind of a treat this time of year. The last thing on the menu today is some granola. This is something, again, we make all year round. We use it as a cereal substitute. It is a rare occasion that I buy store-bought cereal anymore. It just has a whole laundry list of things that I can't even pronounce, so it is definitely one of those foods that I limit in our household, and it is only bought for a special occasion or a moment of weakness on my part. Usually because I went to the grocery store too hungry, and I let my husband convince me to buy things that I would not normally buy. This is another one of those really flexible recipes that you can change up with whatever you have on hand. I really like a chunky granola, like with big chunks in it. So this recipe calls for some flour and water, and it has you like press it down in the pan and then break it apart at the end. I'm keeping the same recipe, but I'm My 2-year-old daughter is eating this, and those chunks are just too much for her to handle, so I'm actually going to just stir it up while it's cooking and not press it down in the pan, so it'll come out more of a loose cereal type consistency. I'm also subbing some of the all-purpose flour that it calls for some almond flour that I have had in the pantry for a really long time. A few years ago, Josh and I tried to do keto for a while, and it worked, but it wasn't really sustainable. I like bread way too much to maintain that long term. But that almond flour, I'm really glad to get it out of the pantry because it's been in there for at least 2 years. I don't really measure my add-ins too much anymore. Just a general eyeball is close enough. I do measure my oats, my flour, and my water just because those are the things that kind of give it its crunchy structure. But as far as the add-ins, today I'm using some slivered almonds. I'm using flaxseed and chia seeds, sweetening it with honey, adding some salt. The salt is important. It's really what makes this recipe, the flavors kind of pop. And then using some coconut oil, that gives it that classic granola flavor. I like honey better than maple syrup in this recipe. You can use either one. I feel like the maple syrup in the oven gives it more of a toasted, I don't want to say burnt, but it's definitely like a deeper flavor than the honey does. The honey kind of keeps it a little bit lighter. And when it's all done, you really should let it cool. The baby was waking up from her nap, so I really rushed this a little bit, and I shouldn't have. But you can add in some cranberries or raisins or some other dried fruit. You could probably also add chocolate chips. That would be good. Or like maybe some peanut butter chips. That would be really good. I haven't tried that. If you've ever tried peanut butter chips in your granola, leave a message in the comments below and let me know. We like this granola plain as a snack, just kind of like grab a handful of it as you're walking by. We also put it over yogurt with some maple syrup on top for breakfast, or like I said, we use it as a cereal substitute with just some milk and maybe some bananas if you have them. That is all for us this week. If you guys have anything that you would like to see us make more videos of in the future, put that in the comments. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a blessed week, and thanks for watching.